Divorce on the horizon. What are the best ways to protect your parental rights?
So it depends on what issue you're looking to protect. So there's obvious two issues, which is physical custody of the kids and visitation. There's obviously a set of issues around joint custody. So in terms of physical custody, one of the things that you want to do is if you're heading for a divorce case, if you're both living in the same house, don't leave the house without the kids. Because if you do, then you just gave your spouse a leg up in the proceedings on physical custody without realizing that you did so. Uh, Another thing that I advise is if you're anticipating a contest around physical custody, make sure you're spending as much time as you possibly can with the kids. People get that wrong all the time. They just kind of continue what they've always been doing. And if the other spouse has a crafty attorney or they just realize it themselves, they are going to be keeping a calendar as to what time you spend with the kids versus what time the other spouse spends with the kids. And those types of calendars are admissible in evidence. And if the other side shows, oh, well, going into the divorce case or maybe even while the divorce case was pending, one parent was spending 60 or 70% of the time that the kids were in the house with the kids, and the other parent was only spending 30 or 40% of the time. That is a factor that the court will consider on physical custody. Now, on joint custody, one of the things that you'll want to do is to make sure that you're very involved in all aspects of the children's lives well in advance of the divorce case being filed. What does that mean practically? That means you're going to extracurricular activities. You are not only participating in setting up things like play dates, doctor's appointments, school events, things of that nature, but you're sharing in taking the kids to those events, and that you're participating roughly as much as the other parent is in all of those activities, because you don't want to have the other spouse open up the avenue to say, wait a second, you're contesting joint custody, but you're only doing so to save money on child support. And, ultimately, the history will show that you have not been all that involved with the kids vis-a-vis decision making. And that's how decision making ultimately gets proved to the satisfaction of a judge, because, of course, one parent could say, oh, I'm very involved. And the other parent could say, well, they're not really all that involved. Well, how does that get proven? That gets proven through the objective evidence coming in from people that administer extracurricular activities or whatever else whatever other activities or events that the kids are involved with. And if the one parent has not been all that involved, then that's not going to bear out all that well in terms of them getting joint custody. Now, in terms of visitation, how do you better your case? Well, be a good parent and don't have any negative issues involved on your end. Or if you do, make sure you address them as early in the process as possible. So as but one example, if you anticipate the other side alleging that you have a mental health issue, go see a therapist. It's definitely not wrong. And in many cases, it can be better if you're going through a divorce case and you're seeing a therapist, especially if you anticipate the other side is going to allege you have some kind of issue along those lines. At the very least, if you don't have an issue or you're adequately addressing the issue, you can get a letter from your therapist that you can share with the opposing counsel, with a court, with the attorney for a child. And you can say, look, even my own therapist says hey, maybe I have anxiety or mild depression, but I'm addressing it and there's no issues with me vis-a-vis parenting. Um, those types of letters go a long way. Likewise, if you anticipate the other side is going to allege that you have a drug or alcohol problem, what do? You go to a drug or alcohol rehab center, not necessarily to do a program, but instead to check into the program, say, I have a divorce coming. This is what the spouse is going to allege. I want you to do an intake, an assessment of me as to whether you think I need a program. That there's not only social workers that do that. There's programs that do that, and you can have that assessment and get a report or a letter from that social worker or from that program that says, "Hey, we assessed him or her. We gave random screens. It's our opinion they don't need a program." But obviously, if the letter comes back and says you need a program, well, then the sooner you get into a program and address your issues, the better off you will be in that later contested custody or visitation case. So those are some of the best ways to, angle yourself for an impending divorce case. And I think that the other thing that you should do is make sure you have a good attorney.